Shalom, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's a pleasure to be able to share some thoughts as we begin to think about returning to the world, energized by each other's company and insights and the creativity of the last several days. So first, I'd like to say thank you to United Synagogue for doing an outstanding job. This was a great convention. And I want us to have a moment of honesty with each other. I want us to root this conversation in something deep. You will hear programmatic suggestions, you will hear policy suggestions, and we need to shake things up, we do. But if we're not rooted in a faith that is real and honest and deep, then we become just another social movement. And the strength that we bring to the table, what we can uniquely bring to the table, is a way of percolating a love of God and a love of Torah so that speaks in a modern voice. That means our agenda has to be one of translation and transportation, as we carry an ancient revelation into social situations that it could never imagine. And so I want to talk to you about what that might look like for us. And I want to start with a confession. I think that the language we have been using until recently is broken. God as king does not move our people. Nobody believes in our communities in the guy in the sky who runs everything. And the more often we fall back on that kind of rhetoric for the divine, the more we parade our illegitimacy. Few of our congregants think of Jewish law as law. Let's be honest, few of us do either. So I am not here advocating jettisoning God, God forbid. I'm not advocating jettisoning halakha, God forbid. What I want us to do is be honest with each other. Can we talk about what it means to be born into a world in which our first experience is love? Think about how miraculously fine-tuned our evolution is, that we are welcomed into the arms of people who have sacrificed pain and time and body and effort to bring us safely into adulthood. Love is baked into our bones. We are born in covenant. We're born relating to the woman who bore us, to the people who raised us, to the relatives we discover who love us without having met us previously. Unmerited love is our first and most profound biological experience and our mandate in life. Take the love that you were given that you didn't earn and share it as widely as you possibly can. A life driven by ahavat chinam, unearned love. And our religion gives expression to that by taking that inner reality and projecting it out as a story that locates us. We're located in a world in which we understand creation to be a gift. The rabbis speak of this world as a banquet that was prepared for us. That's why we came last. And it turns out with remarkable intuition, they're speaking a deep Darwinian truth. The world literally was prepared for us. And we came into the world with everything we need for the journey. And then the next great narrative arc of the story is that evil will eventually succumb and be brought down. And that those who are oppressed and marginalized and despised, they are among the chosen. They are the precious jewels of God's heart. They will be brought to the promise. And that sets our mission. Our mission is to be creative in love, to be bountiful in hope, and to be able to bring people from oppression and disdain to dignity, glory, and dance, all under the guise of freedom. So what I want us to start to take out into the world is a message that the Torah, in many ways, is the world's best kept secret. This book of radical love, this book that brings down pharaohs and says that's baked into the universe, has been turned somehow into itself a source of oppression. The preeminent Jewish spiritual emotion has been guilt. And we have milked the guilt for all it's worth. And the challenge we're facing, my friends, is nobody's feeling guilty anymore. How can we make a traditional Judaism where people feel like they get to make their own life choices? How do we reconcile those two? And it seems to me that the way we bridge the gap between a guilt-driven Judaism of obligation imposed and a life of spectacular rainbow freedom in which we each understand and meet ourselves and then create a world in which we thrive in our individuality, that is the precise place that our Judaism has a message. Because I believe that what our message is that the divine is misunderstood as a coercive man in the clouds, and better understood as that bubbling intuition of love in which we locate our lives. There is a oneness of which we are each an expression. There is a mindfulness out of which we emerge, and that invites us to glory in the moment, in the now, and to celebrate what it means to be alive, to have mind, to have passion, to see where it's broken and feel in that brokenness an opportunity and an obligation. It is our great privilege to bring the message of that divine into the world, a message that we now share with millions, if not billions, of other human beings who tell our story as their own. Like many of you, I have the opportunity to go to Israel on a regular basis. And one of my favorite experiences on any El Al flight is the churches that are going with us. And to sit with a Christian who's never been to the land of Israel before, Bible in hand, and to see the thrill with which our stories animate their lives and their communities. Our fathers and mothers are their spiritual mentors. And that is true for our Muslim brothers and sisters, and it's true for most atheists in this country as well. The frame of our own narratives has spread beyond our borders as a people to encompass the world. And we sit in the heart of that story. So if we can take the power of that story and understand it not as an imposed set of burdens to be carried, but instead as the greatest privilege we've never earned, to live love. When we talk about the mitzvot as burdensome, when we kvetch about the second day of Yontif, when we carry on about how tiresome Passover preparation is, or the things we can't do on Shabbat, we don't just betray Torah, we don't just betray mitzvot, we betray our own souls. Who turns to a lover and says, I love you madly, but you make me do things I wouldn't otherwise do? That's what love is. Love is the inspiration of a new agenda that started out as someone else's priorities but becomes our own. And that's what the mitzvot are about. The mitzvot are about radical love. They are about understanding that each person reflects God's image and that being in God's image takes practice. It takes drinking deeply from the fountain of wisdom that is Torah and that are mitzvot. I love you, honey, I just don't want to change anything I do is a sure recipe for disaster and loneliness. I love you, honey, and I want my love for you to touch every aspect of my life. That's where romance happens. And we are the people in the world's most ancient and abiding romance, and it's not over yet. But romance is not just about holding on to the past, it's about harvesting that feeling and carrying it forward in changing times, and the times, they are changing. The things that we thought of as normal 100 years ago, 40 years ago, last week, they're not the new normal. Things are moving so rapidly that anyone who dares to predict the future is making it up, because they're extrapolating as if the past will be projected into the future. And that's the one thing we know isn't happening. So it is our privilege and our mission to take this heritage of deeds of love, stories of wisdom, and tell them in a 21st century way. And the telling will not just involve words, although as conservative Jews, I pray we will always be a text-based people. That is to say, our Torah, to be authentic, has to be rooted in learning. We have to, each of us, model what does it mean to be studying every day, to have some traditional text that we are working our way through, to be able to allow Hebrew to be the language of our spirituality and our shared common international identity, to be able to resonate to a love of the land of Israel and the possibilities that Israeli democracy still holds out as possible, even when it falls short. But armed with that dream, we then have to take it into places that our ancestors would never have considered possible or worthy. What does it mean to take seriously that every single person, without exception, reflects God's image in a unique and precious way? Many of you know that I am the father of a young man who has pretty severe autism. And Jacob has taught me the power of spirit beyond words, the power of refusing to give up, the power of listening to the experts and saying, yeah, that's not going to be the way the story turns out. And we, as a people, we have been doing that for as long as we've existed. Isaiah foretold our demise. Rambam thought he was writing to the last generation of Jews, and somehow we never got the press release. So here we are. So let others spend their time predicting a dismal future because they assume that it's just the working out of the past. Let us recognize that the future comes to us as the vehicle of God's promise, which is infinite and open and multiform. And let us then have the courage to rise up with this kind of animating love that allows us to always have surplus, allows us to have a bounty of spirit and of energy beyond what is reasonable. And let us take that surplus energy and turn it into communities of real nurture, communities of robust spirit, communities, I want to say the words out loud now, communities of a deep and profound faith in God, one that isn't found in unctuous sermons of self-righteousness and judgment, but rather is demonstrated by the resilience with which we love each other and welcome each other and embrace each other and make room for the newcomers in our midst. And then let us translate that into the spiritual discipline of a life rich in mitzvot. Mitzvot motivated not by fear of punishment, not by a sense of negative consequences, because that's not our story. Our story is that love is a privilege and that it takes work to stay in love. And so the deeds of mitzvot, the holy deeds of Judaism, they walk us through the day reenacting that love again and again and again. Take a moment right now. Take a breath, in, out. Think about all the blessings that you carry at this moment. The people who love you, the community that nurtures you, our ability to come together every 2 years and be a loving community to each other. How many United Synagogue conferences have we all been at with each other? And for those of you who are new, how many do you get to anticipate into the future? We will see each other again and again and again. Think about the glorious day that this is, how the sun rose, and that life is so bountiful and possible on this wondrous planet. Think of all the work that we're privileged to do in the world, healing the wounded, helping the sick, aiding the weak and the despised, fighting for justice. And then allow that to lift you up. Here's what I want to say to you. I travel all around North America. I speak at conservative synagogues as much as anybody. And in community after community, I see a place whose reality exceeds their own vision. Meaning there's a dynamism, there's a depth, there's a loyalty, there's a resilience, and everybody is wringing their hands and schreien Gewalt. We are the people who snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. And it needs to end here. It needs to end now. We are instead the people who are continuously self-surpassing. We are the people who will surprise the naysayers and the predictors of doom by achieving not the impossible, but the miraculous. Thank you.